Hello, welcome back to Cards and Cardboard. Today we're going to do a critique and criticisms of a game called Ravenous River. It's another AEG, very tiny card game focused on large player count. In this case, you can actually play this game from 2 to 7 people. This is based on the old, farmer crosses the river with a sack of feed, and there's a fox and a chicken, that kind of scenario. Except every person kind of has an animal as a secret role that they're going to try to get across the river, as well as try to eat or predate on another animal. So kind of an interesting theme, and again, a really great story. So we're going to take you into the box and kind of show you what we think about this. So we're going to take you into the box now. This is everything you get in here. You get a bunch of cards, the rule book, some voting tokens, some more reference cards, and this bag of tokens. This is kind of optional because you're going to attempt to play to 6 points usually in the round, and with 7 people you need quite a few of these. This works really well for keeping track of score, but ultimately you could use a pen and paper for that, and they're kind of superfluous. You also have an extra voting token for some reason, so you only really need 7 of these. So what you get in here is a pretty decently written rulebook. There's a few little things in here I wish they would add, or some examples of things. The game is kind of unique in the sense that it's got multiple scoring rounds. So again, maybe a little bit better written rulebook would have been nice, but we'll get into that in the final thoughts. So just kind of showing off what you get here. So what you'll do for a setup of the game is you'll take these 7 animal cards. They come from all the way from the lion to the humble mouse, and this kind of organizes a chain of predation. You're going to shuffle these up and put them face down on the side row here, like an animal row. And that's going to be held for later, for when you're deciding who's going to go on these 2 boats to try to cross the river. And then you're going to shuffle these up. These are player reference cards, but they're also your secret roles that you will take in the game. And you can kind of see who you are, what you can eat, and what you can get eaten by. So that's really important for dealing with where your placement is on the boat, because there's this nice little line of predation here that pretty much goes all the way from lion to mouse and then doubles back onto lion again. And it explains all of the rules that you can do on your turn. It's not a bad player reference, but it's also a great way of kind of mixing components where it's your secret role as well as your actual reference. So once you get your reference, you will also get 2 of these 14 action cards. Now there's 7 action cards in here in total, but there's just 2 of everything. So you're going to get 2 of these to represent how much stuff you can kind of do before the turn will end. Now with a 2-player game, you're going to have 2 animal totem cards apiece, whereas with anything above that, you're going to have only 1. And you're going to hold out your cards here, figure out what you're going to do with them. So there's certain cards that you can play right out of your hand that are going to affect the board state here. Very take that elements. So like this one actually removes a boat from play. This one has me where if there's already an animal on here, I actually can take it, put it back in the animal row, and put another one on the boat. But there's other things you can do with these cards instead of playing them for those actions. Now on your turn, you can either take an animal from the animal row for free, basically. You don't have to actually use a card for this. You can take it, look at it. So I know I have the mouse. Do I want the mouse? Well, that depends on my hidden role. Yes, I know where the mouse is because I'm a lion. So I'm going to want this maybe to not be on the boat. So I can either play it onto the board here on the bank, on the near bank, or I can put it onto the boat. Optionally, I can also discard a card to secretly put it back into the animal stack without telling anybody what it was. So there's a little bit of gameplay in there. Now, when you get around to your turn again, you can either keep playing a thing up here from the animals until all these are gone, or you can start playing these to actually manipulate the animals. So I can actually discard this card quietly and move a card onto the boat. Or I could take something off the boat and put it back on the shore. And this is going to continue until eventually the boats reach a state where they are full with 4 animals, and then somebody comes up to their turn and they have no cards in their hand. When that happens, you're going to go into a voting phase. Basically, all the remaining players and that player will secretly find their vote token and decide which one they want to choose, whether they want to continue the round or end the round. When the round ends, what you end up doing is you will find out who was still on the shore and start scoring. So in this case, we have the mouse, the fox, and the lion. Well, starting with predation order, the lion doesn't have the bull to eat because he's on the boat. So he doesn't have to worry about anything else until we get around to the mouse. The fox doesn't get eaten by anything but the dog is also on a boat. So what's going to happen is the lion's not going to care about the fox, but when we get all the way back down around to the mouse is going to take out the lion. And that means that player will get 1 victory point for eating the lion. And then you will also get another victory point for being alive at the end of the round. So since the mouse was not eaten by a cat, it still lives and gets an extra victory point. Then we check the boats. Alright, so what we've done here is actually we had to do a jump cut here. So we actually had to mess with the boats to kind of show an example of this. So what's going to happen here is the bull and the cat are on the boats together. The bull does not eat the cat, and the cat does not eat the bull, so they're just going to go ahead and cross the river like nothing happened. However, we have a fox and a dog on the boat. Well, the fox gets eaten by the dog on the boat, so the dog's actually going to get a victory point for doing that. And then finally what's going to happen is you're going to check what happens when everyone gets to the other shore. So you have the third state, basically, if you made it to the other shore now. Now, in this kind of example here, each one of these characters, or the bull, the dog, and the cat, would all get 2 points for crossing the river. Because when you cross the river, it's worth 2 victory points. So we'll just put some cubes on there. And yeah, congratulations, you won. 2 points. In this case, the dog really won because he got 3 points. But say that we somehow had a horse on here that wasn't eaten and comes on the shore, well then it's going to also get eaten, and suddenly the bull gets 3 points as well. So you're going to have to check for predation on the boats and then also on here. You also have these weird cases where you, like with the last example, since the fox got eaten, the cat still lives on the other side of the shore because its natural predator is now gone. So you got this kind of interesting way you're setting up the manipulation of these characters and just trying to maximize your points for the round. And again, it's all going to be based on what you actually have as your chosen animal for the round. In a 2-player game, you're going to focus on trying to maximize your points with 2 people, and you don't deal with the voting, so thankfully they have some rules for that, but I don't really recommend playing with those. So we're going to take you into the final thoughts here and tell you what we think about this game. Okay, so the wrap-up, or the final thoughts here. So Ravenous River, very light, very portable, very good for what I like about it. But we're going to go down the standard final thoughts here. Rulebook. Rulebook could use some work. This is probably what I categorize as around the 6 for the rulebook. There are some things that were easy to misconstrue, and there's no explanation for all of the card abilities if they come up. Mind you, the cards themselves kind of have this interesting thing where you can use them to just discard for their abilities or discard to move animals. But then you also have to deal with the fact that sometimes when you play 2 of this specific card in particular, you actually remove both the boats from the river, and then you got to deal with this list of predation, and you got to figure out, okay, if the lion eats the bull, does the horse get eaten? We've played it kind of in ways where everybody gets eaten and the mouse survives, but that doesn't make as much sense. So we usually have gone with the whole lion eats bull, so horse is safe, then eats dog, and then kind of going down that whole list. We'll show that off here off to the side or whatever for how that predation works. Again, a little bit more explanation of those cards would have been nice as well. So that's what we're giving out as 6 for the rulebook. So art, the art is okay. It's got pretty decent graphic design. You can clearly tell what eats what and what eats what it gets eaten by based on the cards. And using the cards as a player reference guide as well as the hidden roles was pretty genius. Now, the artwork in this game is just fantabulous for what you get on the art of the cards, but I really wish the iconography was slightly bigger on the edges. Because of that fact that you can clearly read on your cards when you're looking at them, but when you have to like bend down or look at the table, or if you got 7 people around the table, the icons just are not big enough to really see there. Not to mention the iconography like on the dog, which is kind of hard to tell that that's a dog. You have to really bend in and look at it. So we're going to give this a working solid 7. Now, going on to the next part, mechanics. Now, mechanics are a really interesting part of this game. You've got A very simple game in here, but again, that mechanics gets a little flustered when it comes to, okay, I have no cards in my hand, but there's also not full boats. Do we do a vote now, or do we do a vote after the next player goes? Because I can't do anything. Because when all the animals on the animal row are on the bank and you're out of cards, you can't mess with anything anymore. Especially if the boats aren't even full, so you don't actually, I believe, technically end the round. Then it would go on to the next player to decide whether they want to try to end the round. And that voting mechanic is interesting, but overall it feels like when you're going to get to that voting phase, it's just going to happen most of the time. And everyone's either going to be out of cards or someone's just going to keep discarding cards until they're done with the round. But that's kind of the point of the game. This is supposed to be really quick. Very methodical thinking isn't really allowed in this. You're just trying to get as many points as you can through eating the animal that you want to eat, as well as crossing the river for extra bonus points. So we're going to give the mechanics a solid 8. There's a few little things I wish they would change up. Maybe a few more cards for the different abilities. I know there's only so much you can do, but having this whole idea where exactly 14 cards for 7 people and everyone gets 2, you're going to have to shuffle it up all the time. It's just, it works, but it's a little lazy since there's 2 of every card, and maybe it would have been nice to see a little variety in there. With that being said, we're going to move on to the actual component quality. Now, this is just a standard card game and a nice insert box with a punch board for all the tokens. Everything's working in here, and the artwork is great. You're going to want to sleeve this still. The card stock is fairly well quality, but over time, those are going to actually probably wear out with all the times you're going to be shuffling them. And you can't afford to get a nick or a dent on the side of a card, because then all of a sudden you know exactly what animal it is. That's super important for these hidden roll games. So if you get this game right away, I say sleeve it. So that's an official rating of sleeve it. Unfortunately, that means component quality is, again, a working number, so 7. I like the cubes, I like the voting tokens, those work. You don't have to worry about those as much, but those cards are the most vital part of this game. So that brings us into replay factor. Oh boy, does this game have replay factor. It really depends on what your player count is and if there's animals that you really care about for that round or not care about. And plus, since the game really is only played for the 6 points to decide who is the winner, it's great to kind of pull out in like larger parties or even a smaller 2-player game. Because then you're fighting over multiple animals or finding which ones you want to sacrifice in order to eat for other bonus points and stuff like that. It's really great for that kind of play. It gives you a lot of that thinking with that puzzle still of how do I get this across the river without getting eaten by that. So replay factor, we're going to give this a 9. This is extremely high. You're going to have a few things that get repeated in other gameplays, but if you play with different players or play with different styles of people, you're going to kind of see different roles kind of get shifted around, and a lot of people playing these kind of take that element cards to really mess with the game more. Sometimes people are going to play it, cold hand, and they're going to just let the game go by and see what happens, and that's cool too. So final thoughts. What do I think about this game overall? It's really rough. I would love to give this higher rating, but unfortunately this is going to be a low 7 for me. It could almost dip down lower if it had poorly written cards. Thankfully, it's saved from that. So 7's a good working number. It's just going to get to the table fairly often when you're looking for a light filler game. And it's not going to overstay its welcome unless you spend an entire evening with it, which, why would you? There's other games that you could be playing if you're going to spend an entire evening for. But for a quick, easy social deduction game that you can also play with kids, this one fits the bill really well. So with that, that's our final thoughts and a wrap-up of what we thought about Ravenous River by AEG. Thank you so much again for watching another Card and Cardboard review, and have a good night.